tennis courts behind St. Mary's stayed unlocked all summer long. Teenagers drinking cherry cola, singing Elton John. You leaned against the chain link fence in faded corduroy, talking about escape in Ohio, like every restless boy. The streetlights painted silver circles across the cracked green ground, and every word between us felt louder than the town. I still remember your sneakers covered in white chalk dust, and how July made everything feel temporary and enormous. There are nights that never leave you, no matter where you go, still glowing softly underneath the versions of your soul. And somewhere past the suburbs, beyond what time destroys, I'm still 17 beside you, listening to summer noise. Your brother played in garages with a cheap electric band, while your mother folded laundry with cigarette-stained hands. Back then adulthood sounded distant, like trains beyond the hill, something meant for other people, not us standing still. You kissed me once beside the bleachers, near 10:15, and afterward the whole world looked beautifully strange again. No fireworks exploded, no orchestra appeared, just crickets and old headlights and two kids disappearing into years. There are moments too small for movies, yet they shape your life somehow, like moonlight on empty tennis courts, or sweat upon your brow. And every August evening now, when humid breezes rise, I still hear your laughter moving through the night. Maybe innocence isn't ignorance, maybe it's believing joy can stay before mortgages and funerals and disappointments change the way you measure every morning, or hold somebody's hand, back before the heart learns what it can't command. The courts were torn down years ago, a pharmacy stands there now, but memory keeps rebuilding places reality won't allow. And sometimes while driving nowhere with old AM songs playing low, I become that girl beside the fence again, for just a moment or so. There are summers folded quietly inside the mind for life, untouched by age or distance, or who became whose wife. And somewhere in the dark, still under those Midwestern skies, we're leaning on the tennis courts, forever young,
Fast ferry to Staten Island, left Manhattan around 1, carrying nurses, bartenders, and men too tired to run. I stood beside the railing with salt wind in my coat, watching skyscraper reflections shatter softly below. A saxophone from somewhere near the lower deck stairs played my funny Valentine into the harbor air. And for a second loneliness didn't feel like defeat, just another passenger trying to get some sleep. Big cities keep a million stories floating through the dark. Some disappear by morning, others leave a mark. And every river crossing beneath the skyline glow makes you think about the people you no longer know. There was a woman reading Neruda near the vending machines, wearing a red wool sweater and tired eyes that had seen things. She smiled once when the ferry lurched against the winter tide, like strangers sometimes recognize the ache another hides. Back in Queens my apartment waited, cold and undecorated still. One chair, 2 records, unpaid bills, and silence on the windowsill. But something about the water helped loosen all the weight, like motion through the darkness could soften what you hate. The night keeps certain secrets only exhausted people know. How grief becomes lighter briefly where the black rivers flow. And every passing tugboat horn beneath the freezing stars sounded like the city speaking from its scars. Nobody tells you heartbreak can make ordinary things sacred. A paper cup of coffee warm, or simply making it home safely. Maybe survival starts their tiny mercies after midnight. A stranger's smile on a ferry boat, crossing cold water at night. The boat arrived near St. George as dawn began to break, pink light spreading slowly across the harbor wake. The woman closed her paperback and disappeared from view, like some brief human kindness you never quite hold on to. Big cities rarely heal you, but sometimes they let you rest. Among the sleepless thousands still trying their best. And somewhere on the water, between the dark and dawn, I stopped feeling abandoned and simply carried on.
Helen puts honey in her tea every single night, standing barefoot in the kitchen under yellow light. The children finally moved away to Denver and Spokane. Now the house echoes differently when evening rain arrives again. Her husband Frank reads newspapers, half asleep in his chair, muttering about gasoline prices and thinning gray hair. 40 years beside one person changes romance into weather. Something steady, ordinary, still surviving all together. Love doesn't always sparkle, sometimes it simply stays. Through doctor visits, broken pipes, and long exhausting days. And there's beauty in the quiet people rarely write about. Two tired souls still choosing not to walk out. Back in '68 they fought constantly about money and his drinking. There were nights she nearly packed the car without even thinking. But then life kept happening, babies, funerals, school clothes, and somewhere in the middle of it all, tenderness quietly rose. Not the kind from Hollywood movies or magazine advice, something smaller and more durable, like soup on winter nights. Now Frank still reaches for her hand, crossing icy streets downtown. Without noticing, he does it after all these years around. Some marriages become softer once ambition fades away. When people stop demanding life look glamorous every day. And every spoon of honey spinning slowly through the tea feels like proof devotion lives in tiny things unseen. Nobody teaches young lovers how ordinary love appears. Not roses every evening, but staying through difficult years. Maybe real romance deepens after beauty starts to bend, like songs sounding richer somehow near their ending. Tonight snow gathers lightly against the kitchen screen, while Frank falls asleep smiling beside the washing machine. Helen rinses out the teacup and turns the hallway dim, then pauses just a second, looking softly at him. Love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks overhead. Sometimes it's warm honey in a teacup before going to bed. And somewhere in that quiet kitchen, while winter settles deep, two people keep each other company, half awake, half asleep.
Bus stop near Lake Michigan always smelled like snow and diesel fuel. Secretaries clutching paper cups, trying to look composed and cool. I waited there 3 winters after shifts at Carson's store, watching gray waves slap the shoreline, thinking less and less of before. There was a trumpet player weekly, wrapped in an army coat, playing old blues melodies through cracked and freezing notes. People rarely stopped to listen, still he showed up anyway. Some folks keep making beauty even when nobody pays. Cities teach resilience in hard and quiet ways, through frozen mornings, aching feet, and repetitive days. But every now and then a small kindness cuts through, like music by a bus stop when the whole world feels blue. One December there was a waitress named Irene from Cicero, who shared a thermos coffee while cold winds started to blow. She talked about her daughter and wanting warmer states, but staying near her mother, who was getting frail with age. Funny how adulthood becomes choosing who you cannot leave, not the glamorous freedoms young people believe. Still Irene laughed beautifully at things that weren't that funny, like surviving itself required some stubborn kind of sunny. The lake looked endless mornings, steel-colored under clouds, yet somehow life continued among the tired crowds. And every trumpet phrase floating through the sleet made Chicago seem briefly less lonely and concrete. Maybe courage isn't grand, maybe it's commuters standing still, facing another frozen morning against their own will. Maybe grace rides quietly beside exhausted souls, waiting at cold bus stops, trying to stay whole. Spring finally reached the shoreline, the snowbanks melting thin, and Irene stopped appearing, though the trumpet players still did then. Sometimes I wonder where she went, or whether life turned kind, but mostly I remember her laughter in the wind outside. Some strangers remain with you without staying very long, like fragments of a trumpet melody inside an old sad song. And somewhere near Lake Michigan, when winter evenings fall, I still hear Irene laughing above the harbor wall.
Elaine sold silver bracelets at Montgomery Ward downtown, wrapping little velvet boxes for women wearing evening gowns. Christmas seasons got chaotic. Men lined up too close, trying to purchase tenderness with perfume, pearls, and roses. She learned people's relationships mostly by their eyes, whether love still lived between them or merely compromise. There was beauty in the awkwardness of husbands choosing chains, like everyone was searching for language beyond names. People rarely say directly what they're terrified to lose, so they buy rings and lockets and hope somebody understands the truth. And every crowded holiday beneath department store lights made Elaine wonder quietly about her own life. At 28, she rented a tiny studio alone, with green plants by the window and jazz records back home. Her mother called on Sundays asking when she'd settle down, like loneliness was failure instead of peace sometimes found. But Elaine liked independence, the silence after work, candles glowing softly while Curtis Mayfield murmured. She once loved a photographer who traveled constantly and taught her certain people prefer roads to stability. Some women stop apologizing for wanting different things, not weddings in the suburbs, but space enough to dream within. And every bracelet clasped gently around another wrist reminded Elaine daily how complicated love is. Nobody tells young girls freedom can feel lonely too. Still there's dignity in building a life that belongs to you. Maybe happiness changes shape as decades drift along, becoming softer, stranger, but no less strong. Tonight the store grows quiet after one long holiday rush. Elaine counts the register slowly in the velvet dusk. Outside, snow falls on taxis and glowing city signs, while somewhere in the distance a church bell marks the time. People spend whole lifetimes trying to be understood through jewelry, kisses, arguments, and intentions misunderstood. And somewhere behind the counter, while winter settles slow, Elaine keeps wrapping little boxes with ribbons made of gold. There's a lipstick on the coffee mug from somebody I used to be, back when Saturday meant dancing till 2:30 on Bleecker Street. I wore velvet in December too much jasmine oil, believing every handsome stranger might change the whole world. The apartment smelled like incense and books left in the rain, while Roberta Flack kept singing through the window pane. Back then loneliness felt glamorous, like French films after dark. Not this quiet aversion that settles in your heart. Time rearranges women in delicate hidden ways, through birthdays spent alone sometimes, in long commuter trains. Still there's tenderness in surviving your own unfinished story, without turning hard or bitter, just soft around the edges slowly. Yesterday I passed the theater where Daniel kissed me first. Now accountants smoke beside it during coffee breaks at work. Nothing stays cinematic, the city teaches that fast. Neon fades, musicians leave, and beauty doesn't always last. Still I buy fresh tulips Fridays and iron all my dresses, because elegance means something even inside small messes. Sometimes after midnight I dance barefoot anyway, with Curtis Mayfield playing low and no one asking me to stay. Growing older isn't tragic, it's strange and more than sad, watching old versions of yourself become somebody you once had, and every lipstick mark remaining upon porcelain white feels like proof I lived fully, at least a little while. Nobody warned us freedom could feel both bright and blue, a room entirely yours, but nobody waiting in it too. Still I'd choose this life again over shrinking small for love, because peace matters deeply once you've nearly given it up. Outside Manhattan glimmers, wet beneath July heat, and somewhere downtown teenagers still kiss on crowded streets. I rinse the coffee cup slowly as dawn begins to climb, feeling unexpectedly grateful for this complicated life of mine. Time rearranges women, but leaves certain things intact. The hunger for music and softness, and moments we can't get back. And somewhere beneath the city lights, while old soul records spin, I'm still becoming someone I might someday let fully in. Fully in. The woman at seat 14A cried softly through the clouds, trying hard to hide it behind airline magazines and towels. Her wedding ring was missing, but the tan lines still remained. Like certain kinds of heartbreak leave outlines after pain. The stewardess brought coffee and touched lightly her wrist. Such tiny acts of mercy can nearly undo this. Outside the sky stretched endless, white and blue and thin, while somewhere far below us entire lives continued again. Airports carry sorrow in beautifully disguised ways. People leaving marriages or returning home too late. And every flight at sunset above the glowing earth feels full of silent stories nobody says first. She stared down at Nevada as mountains slipped below, remembering motels, swimming pools from summers long ago. Back when she and Richard drove west without a map, sleeping cheap beside highways with records in the back. Now he lives in Portland with someone 23, and she teaches piano lessons in Bloomington quietly. Funny how love transforms slowly from thunder into weather, something you survive eventually, but carry forever. Some women learn resilience 30,000 feet above, watching whole landscapes disappear like unfinished love. And every tiny cabin light inside the darkened plane look like little hearts still glowing against enormous change. Nobody prepares you for beginning life again in your 40s with 2 suitcases and no clear map ahead. Still there's courage in continuing, even trembling through the fear, choosing movement over staying somewhere no longer sincere. The captain starts descending, Chicago comes into sight, golden streets unfolding softly beneath the winter night. The woman wipes her lipstick, then closes both her eyes, as if preparing quietly to survive another life. Airports hold transformations, invisible yet true. People stepping off their planes as somebody entirely new. And somewhere beyond the runway, while cold winds start to rise, seat 14A keeps moving forward beneath Midwestern skies. Daddy sold sweet corn roadside every August after church, with handwritten cardboard pricing and dirt across his work shirt. Mama packed peach sandwiches wrapped inside wax paper thin. While laying, the radio crackled from the pickup's dashboard tin. The highway shimmered golden under heavy southern heat, and cicadas screamed like engines from the willow trees. Back then summer lasted forever, or at least it seemed that way, measured not by calendars, but by how long sunlight stayed. Some childhood smell like gasoline and fresh cut watermelon rinds. Little ordinary heavens that stay inside your mind. And every old radio chorus floating through hot July air still carries pieces of my family somewhere in there. My brother dreamed of Nashville and left before 18, sending postcards full of highways and places he had seen. Daddy pretended not to miss him, but checked the mailbox twice. The quietest people often love the deepest in this life. Years later, after funerals and children of my own, I finally understood the ache parents carry home. Still, when summer evenings darken and distant thunder rolls, I hear tires on gravel roads somewhere in my soul. Some memories become shelter after enough time goes by, not because life stayed simple, but because those days still shine. And every August sunset spilling orange through the fields makes me believe tenderness is the strongest thing we feel. Nobody notices childhood while it's happening at first. You only understand its sweetness after the world has hurt. Maybe love begins exactly there, in pickup trucks and songs, long before adulthood teaches everything can go wrong. Tonight my daughter asks me why old radios sound warm. I smile and say some voices outlive every storm. Outside, the porch light flickers against the summer breeze, and somewhere Daddy's laughter still rides the Tennessee heat. Some roads never leave you, even after years apart, like AM stations fading softly across the southern dark. And somewhere beside that highway, where the sweet corn signs once stood, childhood. I bought the red coat in Montreal during winter '78. After missing my connection at the station, running late, the salesman spoke in French too quickly, still smiled kindly at my face, while snow kept swirling outside like lace. There was a pianist in the hotel lounge playing Gershwin after 9, and businessmen with loosened ties drinking cheap red wine. I stayed 3 extra evenings, though I could have taken trains, just because that city made loneliness feel elegant again. Certain places understand you before you speak a word, holding all your fractured pieces without seeming disturbed. And every snowfall in a strange town, beneath amber lobby light, can make a woman feel briefly like her life might still turn right. I met a journalist from Boston who quoted Camus badly and smoked thin European cigarettes while laughing sadly. We walked beside the river, past glowing cafe signs, talking about marriages and wasting precious time. He kissed me once beneath the bridge, then vanished by next spring. But not every connection needs permanence to mean something. Sometimes two lonely people simply help each other breathe through one cold, complicated season before they have to leave. Not every romance deserves a tragic ending scene. Some exist like jazz melodies, beautiful and brief between. And every winter after that, when snow begins to fall, I still wear that red wool coat, remembering Montreal. Maybe maturity means accepting some loves arriving complete, still warming certain corners of the people they meet. Maybe there's grace in temporary things, hotel bars and passing trains, moments that never become futures, yet remain. Tonight the coat hangs near my doorway, soft from years of wear, smelling faintly of old perfume and winter air. Outside Chicago, taxis cross streets wet with sleet, while somewhere deep inside myself a piano still repeats. Certain cities stay with women long after they depart, like snow collecting silently inside the heart. And somewhere beneath Montreal, where hotel chandeliers glowed bright, I became a softer version of myself one winter night. Diners open after midnight, attract the strangest kinds of souls. Truckers, dancers, broken lovers, and girls pretending they're in control. The waitress pours coffee endlessly without asking many things, like she's learned silence matters more than whatever sadness brings. Outside the highway glistens under sodium orange light, while old jukebox records shimmer through the exhausted night. I came here after leaving Michael with 2 dresses in the car, and nowhere planned beyond Nebraska or who I used to be so far. Late night diners understand the shape of people leaving, those hours when your whole life changes, yet nobody notices the meaning. And every cracked vinyl booth beneath fluorescent skies holds another quiet story about surviving goodbye. There's a teenage cook named Raymond, saving money for guitar strings. He talks about California like some shining promise thing. An older woman near the counter keeps reading fashion magazines, wearing too much lavender perfume and emerald-colored rings. Nobody here belongs together, still somehow it works. Loneliness becomes communal among the coffee perks. Funny how strangers sometimes make the safest company when your whole life feels distant as another century. Roads don't magically heal you, neither do motel keys, but movement gives the heart somewhere to place its memories. And every truck passing westbound beyond the parking lot feels like proof the world continues, whether you're ready or not. Maybe freedom begins trembling, not glamorous or clean. A woman eating pancakes alone at 2:15. Maybe reinvention happens quietly, without dramatic signs. Just tired eyes deciding finally not to look behind. Dawn starts gathering slowly, beyond the interstate. The waitress flips the open sign toward another day. I finish all my coffee, then step into the cold, feeling strangely lighter than I did before. Late night diners keep secrets inside steaming neon haze, witnessing people becoming new versions of themselves always. And somewhere past Nebraska, while sunrise floods the plains, I finally stop introducing myself by Michael's name. I found old Polaroids this morning inside the glove box of my Ford, curled at the edges from Arizona heat and years I can't afford. One shows us near Albuquerque eating peaches by the road, another at a gas station with your army jacket closed. Back then we chased horizons like kids chasing county fairs, sleeping cheap beside highways with tangled motel hair. We thought maps meant freedom and escape. Nobody warned us growing older changes every shape. Photographs as strange companions, they freeze what couldn't stay. Little borrowed pieces of people swept away. Still every faded snapshot beneath the dashboard light makes the whole world smell again like gasoline and summer nights. You wanted California, I wanted someplace calm, somewhere with lemon trees and neighbors on the lawn. Instead, life scattered both of us across different years and states. You became somebody's husband, I learned patience from mistakes. Now I teach piano afternoons to children in Des Moines, explaining rhythm gently while winter storms make noise. Funny how ordinary life arrives without fanfare or applause, just bills, grocery lists, and aching knees, and mornings filled with chores. Memory isn't painful now, just tender around the seams, like hearing old Fleetwood records inside forgotten dreams. And every road through Kansas beneath October skies still carries tiny echoes of who we were before goodbye. Nobody stays young enough to outrun every fear. Eventually the heart grows roots somewhere through the years. Still there's sweetness in remembering the reckless versions first. Two kids beside a desert road, believing love could burst. Tonight the radio crackles as rain taps softly down. I slide the Polaroids back carefully before driving through town. The headlights blur the storefronts, silver in the wet, and For the first time in decades I smile instead of regret. Some memories stop hurting once they're given room to breathe. Not erased or rewritten, just folded quietly beneath. And somewhere in that glove box, under maps and cigarette smoke, part of my younger heartbeat still survives the road. Margaret painted seascapes in a cottage near Cape Cod, wearing oversized sweaters and old men's wristwatches. Tourists bought her canvases during humid afternoons, thinking sadness looked romantic, framed in ocean blues. She brewed tea in cracked ceramics and listened to Debussy while gulls screamed outside windows above the restless sea. Nobody in Provincetown knew much about her past, only that she walked alone at dawn and spoke unusually soft and fast. Some women disappear deliberately from cities and from names, choosing solitude over repeating the same exhausted games. And every wave against the shoreline outside weathered glass sounded like another chapter, quietly letting go at last. Years before in Philadelphia, she'd been married to a judge, living among crystal dinners and country club applause and sludge. But polished rooms can suffocate as easily as grief, especially when your own reflection starts feeling like a thief. So she left one snowy March day with paintings in the trunk, driving east through thunderstorms and roadside diners drunk. Funny how freedom sometimes looks like peeling wallpaper and salt air instead of magazine perfection or diamonds people wear. Not every lonely life is tragic. Some become calm instead, like moonlight stretched across the harbor, or unwritten words unsaid. And every canvas Margaret finished held fragments of the tide and the woman she rebuilt slowly after leaving that old life behind. People mistake softness for weakness until storms begin. Then they learn certain quiet souls are stronger underneath the skin. Maybe peace arrives exactly where expectations end, in tiny seaside kitchens with no one left to pretend for again. This evening fog rolls inward, blanketing the pier below. Margaret lights a single candle beside the radio glow. A Chopin record spins slowly as rain clouds gather near, and somewhere deep inside herself, the silence finally clears. Some women choose their own names after enough years pass, no longer asking permission to exist exactly as they are at last. And somewhere beside the Atlantic, while cold gray waters rise, Margaret paints another ocean under weather-beaten skies.
Snow fell on the laundromat like ash from a quiet fire, while dryers hummed like distant trains and old men checked tire flyers. I sat there with 2 duffel bags and a thermos full of tea, watching socks spin endlessly at 3:15. Across the room, a mother folded tiny Superman pajamas, trying to keep 2 sleepy children calm beneath fluorescent drama. Funny how life keeps happening even after things collapse. People still wash uniforms and count exact change back. Winter makes cities honest, every crack exposed by cold. Still strangers keep surviving inside laundromats and snow. And every spinning washer beneath the buzzing lights looks strangely beautiful tonight. My apartment lost its heating 3 weeks before Christmas came. The landlord stopped returning calls and everybody blamed inflation and shame. At the plant they cut out overtime again around New Year's Eve, the kind of news grown men receive, then silently leave. Still Earl behind the counter played Sam Cooke every night, as if soul music alone could somehow keep things right. Maybe in a way it did, because nobody fought much there. People shared detergent quietly like they understood despair. Hard times change the atmosphere of neighborhoods and streets, yet kindness starts appearing in smaller ways beneath, and every saxophone refrain floating through warm steam made survival seem briefly more human than it seemed. Nobody photographs moments like laundromats at night. Still entire worlds unfold there under artificial light. Single fathers, exhausted nurses, teenagers skipping school, all orbiting the dryer slowly, trying to stay useful. Near dawn, the snowfall thick and blanketing the avenue. The mother zipped her children's coats, then disappeared from view. I carried my clean shirts outside into the freezing air, and suddenly the whole dark city felt easier to bear. Winter leaves impressions on people and on towns. Still warmth survives in unexpected rooms when the temperature goes down. And somewhere through that snowfall, while streetlights shimmered gold, I remember tired hearts can last longer than the cold.
Silk scarves at Union Station, swirling through departing steam. Businessmen and college lovers crossing paths like half-finished dreams. I sold magazines near Platform 8 most evenings after school, watching strangers kiss goodbye like heartbreak looked glamorous and cool. The station clock kept ticking above polished marble floors, and every train leaving westbound sounded enormous. There was a trumpet busker nightly near the cigarette machine, playing lonely jazz phrases for people in between. Train stations carry longing in beautifully quiet ways. People becoming memories before the next train leaves the bay, and every suitcase rolling across that checkerboard floor felt like somebody carrying a life they couldn't hold anymore. A pianist from New Orleans used to stop there every spring, wearing cream-colored jackets and turquoise silver rings. He taught me how to smoke clove cigarettes and quote Tennessee Williams lines, then vanished toward California like all charming men sometimes. Still I kept the silk scarf he bought me, folded inside a drawer, smelling faintly of cedarwood and rainstorms near the shore. Not every unfinished story needs bitterness attached. Some simply become beautiful because they never lasted. Youth arrives in fragments. You only understand later. A travel tales. Nobody tells young women how quickly cities change. 1 year jazz clubs everywhere, next year disco rearranged. Still somewhere beneath fashion and trends that rise then fade, tenderness survives quietly in small choices people made. Tonight I pass Union Station, returning from work alone. The marble floors look smaller now than when I was 19 years old. But the trumpet player's grandson still performs there after dark. And suddenly the whole old building feels alive inside my heart. Some places keep your younger self waiting there unchanged, like perfume trapped inside silk scarves, or voices inside trains. And somewhere beneath Union Station, while midnight engines roar, part of me still sells magazines beside platform 4. The pharmacist's daughter wore corduroy and boots, reading Sylvia Plath secretly behind the church hymn books. Her father owned the drugstore near Maple Avenue, where old men bought newspapers and cough syrup in the blue. She dreamed of San Francisco and poets near the bay, while ringing up prescriptions every Saturday. The town called her too restless, too quiet and too strange, but certain hearts are born already looking past the range. Small towns hold people gently and tightly all at once, keeping Sunday dinners warm while making dreamers run. And every porch light glowing across the county roads felt like love and limitation twisted closely into one. At 17 she met a drummer passing through with a band, sleeping 6 inside a van and living gig to gig across the land. He smelled like gasoline and cedar and carried books by Kerouac, the kind of boy who leaves eventually without ever looking back. Still, for one warm Tennessee summer, she believed escape was near, dancing barefoot near the river with music in her ears. Then September came too quickly. The band rode west once more, leaving only tire tracks outside the hardware store. Not every first heartbreak leaves somebody destroyed. Sometimes it simply opens doors toward versions unexplored. And every late night radio song matter still. Nobody becomes themselves all at once or cleanly, usually through mistakes and longing and roads turning unexpectedly. Maybe youth exists exactly to teach the heart to roam before adulthood persuades it safety matters more than home. Years later in Seattle, she cuts hair near the pier, still keeping Tennessee postcards inside a dresser mirror. Sometimes while closing shop alone, as rain slides down the glass, she hears old southern rock songs and smiles into the past. Small towns leave fingerprints even after people go, like harmonicas through summer air or porch lights in the snow. And somewhere near Maple Avenue, where the cicadas cried, the pharmacist's daughter first learned how wide the world could be. There were cigarette burns on the piano at Valentino's downtown, where singers wore sequins and heartbreak hung around. I played there every Wednesday from 75 till spring, watching lonely businessmen pretend not to feel anything. The bartender polished glasses like holy little rites, while bourbon softened voices under velvet lights. Some nights applause felt warm enough to almost heal the room. Others, every song sounded like perfume after doom. Keep strange company with people who can't sleep, meeting them in dim-lit places where wounds still run deep. And every trembling piano chord floating through cigar smoke haze carried fragments of forgotten lives across exhausted days. A married lawyer named Vincent requested Nina Simone, then stayed after closing just to avoid going home. He spoke about Connecticut like a prison made of lawns, and wives who stop touching you long before they're gone. I understood immediately, because singers always do. Bars become confessionals after 2:15. Still nobody there wanted saving, only temporary grace. One warm song and somebody listening to the sadness on their face. Nightclubs collect loneliness the way ashtrays gather flame, quietly and endlessly, without judgment or shame. And every woman at the microphone beneath amber hanging lights into something people like.
Nobody applauds survival
When it happens slowly,
still artists keep
creating beauty inside the lowly and lonely.
Maybe songs exist exactly
For evenings such as these, when strangers need reminding, the heart still feels and bleeds. Valentino's closed in '80. Now it's some insurance place. But sometimes while passing downtown, I still slow my pace. Because if the wind hits right near midnight after rain, I swear I almost hear applause and glasses clink again. Some voices never leave rooms, even decades after gone, like smoke inside old curtains or echoes inside songs. And somewhere behind that piano, where the cigarette marks stay, a younger version of myself still sings the night away. June served strawberry milkshakes at a diner off Route 10, calling everybody darling, like she'd known them since forever then. Truckers tipped her quarters, teenage boys wrote numbers down, but June kept staring westward, past the edges of the town. She saved every extra dollar inside an oatmeal tin, dreaming of New Mexico and mornings full of wind. The jukebox mostly played old country, George Jones and Tammy Wynette, songs about people loving badly and trying not to regret. Small town girls grow restless in beautifully hidden ways, smiling through their waitress shifts while counting distant days. And every highway stretching westward beyond the parking lot felt like another version of herself she hadn't become yet but thought. A photographer from Austin stopped by once every spring, driving dusty station wagons packed with cameras and strange things. He showed her desert landscapes printed black and white, and talked about Santa Fe like paradise at night. June listened while refilling coffee, trying not to stare too long at the possibility of leaving. She'd carry it's deep in certain families, like religion or debt, teaching daughters safety first and dreams later, if ever met. Still every evening after closing, when the chairs were upside down, June stepped outside, imagining roads beyond town. And every diesel engine crossing through the dark sounded like an invitation inside her heart. Nobody notices yearning when it wears a waitress smile. Still entire futures tremble beneath ordinary lives. Maybe courage starts quietly, one saved paycheck at a time, until eventually the horizon feels less frightening than staying behind. By autumn, June had packed her Ford with sweaters, books, and cash. The diner owner hugged her tightly beside the trash. At dawn, she crossed the county line with sunrise in her eyes, and somewhere near Amarillo started recognizing her own life. Some departures taste like freedom, and strawberries syrup too, sweet enough to remember long after passing through. And somewhere on Route 10 tonight, while jukebox records play, June keeps driving westward toward her own name. The green curtains in apartment 6 move gently with the trains. Every evening after supper, when downtown thundered rain, I rented there in Boston, above a tailor shop, where jazz drifted through the floorboards till the subway finally stopped. There was barely room for dancing, still sometimes I would try, with wine balancing dangerously and Billie Holiday nearby. Back then solitude felt romantic, like poems left unread, not the quieter kind adulthood becomes inside your head. Rooms remember versions of the women living there, perfume and old wallpaper, or ribbons in their hair. And every tiny apartment, holding one lamp glowing dim, contains entire emotional worlds hidden deep within. A philosophy professor used to visit every Thursday, bringing pears and paperbacks and opinions about Camus. Always he kissed with surprising gentleness for somebody so severe, and listened better than most men I had known that year. But he belonged to another woman, marriage somewhere west. So eventually affection turned into distance and regret. Still I kept one wool scarf he forgot beside my chair, because objects sometimes comfort us more than people ever care to share. Certain romances linger without demanding names, like cigarette smoke after midnight or snow against window panes. And every passing subway shaking the kitchen light made Boston feel beautifully lonely most nights. Nobody escapes longing, they only learn its shape. Some carry it in silence, others through mistakes. Maybe adulthood means understanding people arrive incomplete, still leaving marks upon us deep beneath the skin discreetly. Last week I passed the building, returning from the coast. The tailor shop is gone now, replaced by condos for the wealthy hosts. But the curtains in apartment 6 still fluttered emerald green, and suddenly the whole old decade returned to me unseen. Rooms outlive their tenants, still carrying traces through time of women dancing barefoot to old jazz records and wine. And somewhere above Boston, while midnight subways roar, part of me still lives alone behind apartment 6's old door.
The basketball court stayed empty after 6 once winter came, except for one kid practicing long after dark each day. His radio balanced courtside, played Marvin through static snow, while breath curled from his sweatshirt into the freezing glow. I watched from my apartment 3 floors above the park, working night shifts at the post office and smoking in the dark. Funny how determination looks holy from far away. One teenager shooting free throws at the ending of the day. Cities hold invisible prayers inside ordinary scenes, people trying quietly to become what they dream. And every bouncing basketball echoing through the cold sounded like stubborn hope refusing to do what it was told. Back in '73 I boxed some till my shoulder gave out bad. Then life became warehouses, marriage fights and being sad. You stop noticing your own youth until it disappears. One morning your knees ache climbing stairs, and 10 whole years are here. Still that kid kept practicing through sleet and icy wind, like discipline itself could save him from where he'd been. Maybe in a way it could, because certain streets demand you build yourself from scraps before becoming any man. Ambition wears work boots more often than silk ties, usually beneath street lamps, not glamorous spotlights. And every winter evening, looking down from apartment 3, I rooted quietly for someone, still believing fiercely. Nobody claps for effort when nobody's around. Still entire futures form themselves on empty, frozen grounds. Maybe greatness starts exactly where loneliness and hunger meet, at a basketball court in December, on a dead-end city street. By March the snow had melted and college scouts appeared. The kid played under sunlight now, with everybody cheering near. I never learned his last name or where life took him then, but sometimes after midnight I still think about him again. Some memory stays shining without belonging to your own past, like witnessing somebody else's hope, bright enough to last. And somewhere beneath winter lights, where cold winds used to blow, a basketball still echoes softly through the falling snow.
Barbara drank champagne alone at the Holiday Inn bar, watching businessmen flirt badly beneath cigarette-stained stars. The pianist knew Burt Bacharach and played him every night, soft enough for heartbreak, loud enough for twilight. She'd driven up from Jacksonville after leaving her fiancé, with 2 dresses and a typewriter packed in Chevrolet. No dramatic screaming match, no slammed suburban door, just one exhausted woman realizing she couldn't pretend anymore. There comes a quiet moment when the heart begins to shift, not like thunder in the movies, more like loosening a grip. And every lonely hotel lounge beneath amber-colored light becomes a waiting room between the old life and the next life. Traveling shoe salesman asked politely for her name, then talked about Milwaukee and children he rarely came to see again. They laughed about bad coffee and airports smelling strange, how adults spend years adjusting to plans that rearrange. Barbara hadn't laughed that freely in nearly half a year. Funny how strangers sometimes make breathing easier. Outside trucks cross the highway past glowing vacancy signs, while somewhere deep within her something finally untied. Freedom rarely enters wearing glamorous disguise. Sometimes it arrives tight with mascara in your eyes, and every tiny choice afterward builds a different road, one nobody back home could ever fully know. Nobody teaches young women how to disappoint politely, how to walk away from futures everyone else thinks fit neatly. Still there's courage in refusing a life that feels rehearsed, even when the unknown waiting looks uncertain and worse. Near midnight, the bartender stacked glasses one by one. Barbara closed her notebook softly while the final song was sung. The pianist switched to silence. The room grew small and gold, and for the first time in forever, tomorrow didn't feel cold. Some departures happen quietly, without applause or blame. Just one woman reclaiming the shape of her own name. And somewhere past Jacksonville, where interstate lights thin, Barbara lifts another champagne glass and slowly starts again.